And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Welcome to RBLR Rowdies here on RBLR Sports. My name is Leo Santos, here joined by James. James, how you doing, man?
Okay. Let me see. How am I doing? That's a loaded question here. We've got a lot of good going on. We've got some bad going on. We've got some other soccer things that didn't happen with the Rowdies, but I think you would want me to avoid that. So we'll just stick with the Rowdies for now.
I like that plan. Let's just stick with the Rowdies, and I hope everyone listening is ready for this 5-hour show we have for you. I'm just kidding. It's not a 5-hour show. It's longer than usual, but we have a lot to cover. 2 games for the Rowdies, a lot to talk about, and let's just say it was an up and down week, James.
Yeah, up and down is one way to put it.
Yeah, so let's get to it. The first game the Rowdies had was on Wednesday against New York Red Bulls 2. They went before the game. We gave our predictions. James gets a 2-0 win. I guess a 3-0 win, and unfortunately, we were both wrong. Although we did predict the Rowdies to win, they won 1-0, so no points for us there, James.
Yeah, I don't mind coming away with 3 points, but it would have been nice if I had given them, the benefit of the doubt, I guess, the Red Bulls. But whatever, we'll move forward and we'll get back to our predictions later. But yeah, it started off as an interesting week, not only because we had these 2 games, but we also had a player signing that was announced and I don't know if this has to do with Steven Dos Santos. This is a player who's been very good for us up front, and those of us who have seen the games, those of us who will see the games moving forward, unfortunately, he will not be there, at least for the immediate future, from what I can tell. Foster Langsdorff is a player that the Rowdies have now signed on loan, seemingly to fill in for him. He's here on a longer-term loan, not just a couple of days or something. And I just don't think that bodes well for Duba and his injuries. But once we got that out of the way, the games started coming thick and fast this past week.
Definitely, yeah. We'll get more to it later, but we've seen changes to this the Rowdies team against New York Red Bulls. Usually, we usually see, besides the back line and the goalkeeper positions, we usually see Fernandez, White, Hilton, Connor Antley, and up top we usually have Steinberger, Dos Santos, Big Duba, like you said, and Quinzati. But for this game, we saw some changes. Jordan Adebayo Smith coming in for the injured Big Duba, and we seen Doherty make his way for Lawrence White, who also picked up a knock before the game against the Red Bulls. So without further ado, you want to take us to the first half, James?
I can do that, yeah.
All right.
So when we previewed this game, we talked about how the New York Red Bulls 2 team was really not doing all that well this season. They've been struggling, and the one thing that you and I failed to take into account was that this is an international break for MLS. So that means that any players with the MLS roster who haven't been getting a lot of time and, they might need some play here and there, this would be the perfect game for them to get it in for the New York Red Bulls 2 team. And that's exactly what they did. They brought down Tom Barlow, John Tolkien, and a Venezuelan player whose last name is Wickelman. It's a couple of interesting names. We got Wickelman and a Tolkien on this team, but yeah, they came in and they had a big impact on the game here. I had mentioned previously that Jordan Doherty, like you said, he was probably going to get a look in this game because of the strategy that we could take in terms of trying to break down this Red Bulls team. They play a high line because they are a very high-pressing team. They like to attack teams when they have the ball. So when the Rowdies did have the ball at the back, they like to try and push forward, and one of the best ways to beat them is to look over the top, with Jordan Doherty stepping in to actually take care of that role. And it came off with pretty good effect. He was the top chance creator for this game, and it included 1 assist that I think you wanted to discuss here.
Yeah, that assist, man, that was, what about that pass? It had everything you would want in a pass. The Rowdies were on a counter, and that vision from Jordan Doherty is just crazy. With the outside of his foot, that takes a tremendous amount of skill to complete that. Not only just to give a pass with outside your foot, but for that distance and to put it in a place where Jordan Adebayo-Smith could just turn and run, and he was between about two defenders, so Jordan Doherty had to get that spot on, and that's exactly what he did, and Adebayo-Smith was just on goal. And I've been saying it for the, I don't want to brag, but it feels good when you're right, so I think I have the right to brag for this one. But the past two games, the past two podcasts, excuse me, I've been saying that once Adebayo-Smith gets a start, he's going to score a goal, and I've just seen it coming because whenever he would get, whether 10 minutes to get subbed on or 15 minutes to get subbed on, he was always in really good positions. Although he didn't finish off most of those chances, I was just thinking to myself, like, if this dude gets 45 minutes, just imagine the damage he could do. And, he was just waiting and waiting for his chance. You've seen how Gonzalez would drop back downfield, but Adebayo-Smith stayed up top with the last defender for New York Red Bulls, too. And, that's what eventually led to the counter. And I feel like Rowdies playing that a little bit, just to keep Adebayo-Smith up there and just send him whenever you can, because he has that pace, he has that strength, and they showed the composure he had, and he has ice in his veins, and we can see that with that celebration he did.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, I liked that. He seemed like he had been preparing for a moment like that.
Definitely, yeah.
But, so that's how the first half went. It seemed to be that the Rowdies were kind of absorbing pressure and then looking to put the ball over the top, and it came out to good effect with Jordan Adebayo-Smith's goal. And then in the second half, things got a little more hairy there. After, a little uncomfort for the Rowdies when they had the ball at the back, the second half really kind of got away from them. We started off relatively brightly, and when we started the second half, coming in from the break, the New York Red Bulls moved John Tolkien into the middle for Michael Knapp. Michael Knapp was a player we highlighted in the previous podcast as possibly not being up to snuff at this level, at least yet. He's a young guy, so fair enough. But they moved that John Tolkien into the middle, and they moved a new left back, Juan Castillo, out into his spot that he started. So that changed things up a little, and the Red Bulls moved from their original formation into a 4-2-3-1, where Tolkien was playing in the midfield, and that Wikelman Carmona was playing in front of him. And Carmona, he had a lot of impact on this game, along with Tom Barlow, the other MLS player that Red Bulls dropped down up top. They were very important to how the Red Bulls try to play with their pressing, and they had they put a lot of pressure on the Rowdies back line, especially when they had the ball. So even though we did get those chances over the top, it did start to break down a little bit, and ultimately Jordan Doherty was pulled in the second half too. They made a substitution. Jan Ecker came on for Jordan Doherty, and Connor Antley came on for Sebastian Dahlgaard, who had started at the right. And that's when it really started to go downhill for the Rowdies, because everything moving forward was in the direction of the New York Red Bulls attack. There really wasn't too much in terms of the Rowdies moving into the Red Bulls half, and there really wasn't that much positive possession, even just between the defenders, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I would say about the Rowdies in that second half was that Aaron Guillen and Leo Fernandez seemed like the only outlet the Rowdies could really play the way out of trouble. You've seen the link of play between the two, Fernandez dancing around defenders and putting more crosses into the box, but really in that second half, that's probably the only bright spot I've seen from the Rowdies, just making the way out of trouble on that left flank. And I think that just comes down to both the experience and the chemistry those two players have, and really that's the only bright spot they had. But Jan Acker, like you said, came in to shore up the midfield, and I thought he did a good job of that. And the defense was tested a lot. They had to hold firm. They had to stay concentrated, stay focused. And Evan Laurel, what more can I say about that guy? He had a phenomenal game.
He has had several phenomenal games this season, but in particular, I think that these two games this past week were, something where he just reached a whole new level even. Really it's something that, it's something that he has just been saving our bacon over and over. And today, or those last two games, it really came into, focus, because there wasn't too much going forward. So you really had to just do all of your defending, especially in the last 30 minutes, and be perfect with that defending. You had to make sure that you didn't put a foot wrong and give away a penalty or pass the ball into the wrong area, something like that. But when the Red Bulls made their final substitution, they brought on Omar Sow for Jake LaCava. Jake LaCava was a player I had highlighted as not really being up to snuff again at this level, and you know what? He might have heard me too, because he had a pretty good game actually up top. But regardless, he was taken off, and Omar Sow came on to play with Tom Barlow and Rold Mitchell, an academy player for the New York Red Bulls. And those three players up top just kept coming in waves. They were showing up on the Rowdies' doorstep, trying to shoot from every angle they could. And there's really a big difference in statistics that we can see from the first half to the second half. So when you look at chances created in the first half, those were 9-2 in favor of the Rowdies, and then after the game, it ended up being 10-8. So you can see the difference there, obviously, and the shots were even more disparate. At the half, it was 10-3 in favor of the Rowdies, and when the game was finished, it was 13-11 in favor of New York Red Bulls. So they had that many more shots in the second half that they even overtook what we had going into the first half. It's really, there's another cliche in soccer that is everything can be broken down to it's a game of two halves. And that just means that, one half, one team has a lot of possession, has a lot of momentum, all that. And then the second half, often, the other team will come back and say, hey, now it's our turn. And it was really on display here. The Red Bulls were really positive, and I'm surprised in the end that we got away with it and got away with a 1-0 win, but I'm very happy that we did. It turned out to be really good for us.
Definitely, yeah. Always happy to get a win, no matter by how much. But especially playing against this Red Bulls team that, let's be honest, caught all of us by surprise. We didn't expect them to take us to play a game like this, and to really take on the Rowdies toe to toe. And like I said, a tale of two halves. The first half, Rowdies dominating. Second half, the Red Bulls too dominating. But I think the key difference here was, we seen chances late in the second half from New York Red Bulls to convert and tie the game at 1-1. But I think what ultimately separated the teams was the experience, the form, and the composure from the Rowdies is what ultimately got them that goal. And, the ability from Forrest Lasso, Evan Laurel, Aaron Gee, and Jordan Scarlett to know how to see a game out, to close a game out. Even though they were walking on thin ice, they had the ability and experience and composure to see a game out.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to take into consideration here, because as we mentioned in the previous game, and as we mentioned a little bit in this podcast, the players that we were up against in this game are all players who are 20 and under, especially those that are in their attack, except for Tom Barlow, I should mention, because he was on loan from the MLS squad. But everyone else was, a teenager, essentially, that they're playing against, and they don't have the experience necessary to, get through those tough patches where you are shooting, and you really just can't get anything to come off for you. The Rowdies, on the other hand, were good enough to say that, this is going to be a game and a portion of the game that we're going to have to bunker. And we know how to bunker. We can get it done. We can get in the way of shots, and we can make sure that, even if it comes down to Evan Laurel being the Superman at the back, he will do that, and he can be there to save our day.
Definitely. And one thing I want to mention before we move on, we did see the debut from Langdorf, who, although he was only on for about roughly 20 minutes, we did see him come on his first time being in a Rowdies uniform. What did you make of it, James? Or is it still a little bit too early to tell?
Well, I would say at this point it's a little bit too early to tell. I think that when he was announced, there was a lot of fanfare in terms of the social media space. He has a very good record at this level. For Portland Timbers 2, which is the second team for the Portland Timbers MLS team, he scored 21 goals in 56 games at this level. And then last year, he scored 10 goals in 16 games for Reno. So, that's obviously a very good return. And it was because of that return that he was signed by an MLS team where he wasn't getting too many minutes, and we were able to take him on loan. Mm-hmm. That's why, there's probably all that fanfare. But I think getting into a team, and this is your first interaction with almost all of these players, probably their first interaction, in fact, because I don't know that any of them came from the West Coast like Foster Langsdorff did. It's just very hard to work your way into a system and know exactly how to do it. I don't think that he had the biggest impact when he came off the bench these 2 games, but it's not the case that, that's going to be it and Foster Langsdorff is going to be sitting on the bench for the rest of the season. He's going to get into the rhythm of things at training, and he's going to learn the way that the Rowdies want him to play, and I think that he's going to pick it up a lot more. It's just, unfortunate, I think, the timing in this case.
100%, definitely. One thing I would say is that, there was opportunity for him. He was putting pressure on the New York Red Bulls to defender, and ultimately he had the ball. He was gone. He was like he was through. From the midline to the opponent's goal. He had the ball. He was taking off, and then unfortunately, the New York Red Bulls too made a professional foul, put him back, and it's like his dream start, his dream moment was just took away from him. But that's solid. That's how it is, man.
Yeah, unfortunately that will happen in games like this. But with all that said, let's just move into our analysis as opposed to the play-by-play here. And we'll start that with player of the game. Leo, can you tell me who you thought deserves that for this game against the New York Red Bulls, or in this case, the Baby Bulls?
I think there's only one winner, obviously, and it has to be Evan Laurel for me. If it wasn't for Evan Laurel, there's no way the Rowdies win this one. Although their defense stays strong, we did eventually get a goal, but this game had Evan Laurel saves all over it, so it's got to go to him.
See, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Now, I was kind of tossing it up in the air back and forth between him and Jordan Doherty, because Doherty had those chances created, like we said. He had the assist, like we mentioned, and when he went off, and they brought a new player into the midfield, that is when it really kind of started to fall apart for the Rowdies in the midfield, and our defense was really just not able to get anything going other than, that last-ditch defending. I think that the way that you win player of the game, though, is by being, all the way through the best or the most important player to that win, and just as you said, that's what Evan Laurel was, so I got to give it to him as well.
Yeah, it was tough. I was actually thinking about it too. I would have given it to Jordan Doherty too, because like you said, you seen the difference he made when he was subbed off. Rowdies couldn't really control the threat that the Red Bulls was posing on them. So honestly, I feel like between these 2 players, any of them could have been man of the match.
Yeah, absolutely. But he was just outstanding that game. The whole back line was tested, and they stayed strong, but I think that the strongest person out there was Evan Laurel because of the massive saves that he had. That you can, when a defense gets broken down and there's a shot that all of them are like, oh no, this is probably going to go in, and your goalkeeper is there, makes a miraculous save, that is kind of like has a rallying effect that gets you all going again. And he did that, I don't know, 2 times, possibly 3 throughout the course of this game.
Yes.
You can't discount that at all. That's almost as good as scoring a goal.
Definitely. Like I said, if it wasn't for him, the Rowdies don't win this game. They just don't. And moving on from man of the match, we talked about how Jordan Adebayo-Smith would score a goal. We talked about how Laurel had an astounding game. I want to get into the back line, because they were seriously tested. Guillen, Scarlett, Forrest Lasso, they were all tested, but they had to stay strong. And Lasso just shows like what an anchor he is back there. Every single ball in the air, he claimed his own. He did great passes out the back, went into challenges as he needed to do. And Scarlett and Guillen, they were all on the same page, and they just stayed strong. That's ultimately they got the clean sheet.
Yeah, and it's a reason that this was the best defense in the league last year. These are the top players in this league at those positions, in my opinion. And if you go out and you sign specifically for filling the roles that Scarlett and Lasso and Guillen have filled, you can't have done a better job than the Rowdies did signing those guys. They're just top notch.
Definitely. One thing I do want to say is that although we did get the win, I do believe we're still seeing how much an impact the absence of Dos Santos is affecting the team.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. This goes back to what we were saying about Foster Langsdorff not having much time with the team, you know? Duba had been with us since the preseason and gone through all of those games before we even got into our actual season, and then he was there with us when we were, you know, starting out against a lower team and then building up to the Phoenix game until until he was, you know, injured actually. But he knows the system. He knows what is required of him. And until we get somebody who can fill in the role and understands exactly the way he did, it's just not going to be the same as having him up there. I totally agree that he's a very important player until and unless we have somebody doing what he does.
Yeah, and there was a couple of chances in the game. For instance, there was I don't know if it was the first or second half. I believe it might have been the first half. Fernandez puts in a cross in the box, and Doherty goes in for the header, but it goes Steinberger. Sorry, Steinberger goes in for the header, and it goes just wide. And there was chances where Antley would put crosses in the box, or Gonzalez would put crosses in the box, and no one's there. Literally, the ball just goes through the 6-yard box, and no one's there to claim it. And in my head, as I'm watching this, I'm like, if Dos Santos is on the field, he could have been in those positions to get another goal. And, you know, maybe if he was on the field, we would have seen maybe a different scoreline, 2-3-0. But, you know, Rowdies are going to have to learn to win games without him, to not only win games, but get goals without him. And go ahead, James.
I was just going to say, the best thing about having somebody like Steven Dos Santos out there, he's obviously a big man. And when you're playing against a bunch of teenagers, one of the best things to have is someone who can just shove them over and put them in their place. You know, that's kind of how players improve when they're younger is, you know, they have somebody who's bigger, just show them that, you know, you're not good enough and this is what you need to do to get to the next level. And Duba is the type of player to come in and knock you on your butt and then put it past your goalkeeper too. But
exactly.
I don't know that we're going to have that anytime soon. We got to hope that Foster Langsdorff is able to come in and be that big player too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Duba would have made the young defenders learn how to play physical soccer the hard way.
Exactly, the hard way.
But with all that being said, the Rowdies won 1-0, and history was made, James. The Rowdies started out the season 5-0, and that's the best start in history in the modern era for the Tampa Bay Rowdies team. And what a time to be a Rowdies fan, James.
I'm stunned by it. I think that this was one of the potential trap games that we had in those, you know, first 5. Phoenix was the biggest, but they passed that test, and then, you know, you're coming off the high after the game after that, and they won that, and they're coming to this game, and you and I were both thinking, I don't know that Neil Collins was thinking this, but you and I were both thinking this would be something of a cakewalk. You know, there's nothing really at this level that's a cakewalk, but it's probably one of the closer things that you could get to it. But they still came out on top when there were a couple of MLS players playing for the Red Bulls team. It's like, it's amazing to see that this is what this team can accomplish when there are so many things going against them, like COVID taking away a chance to play in the championship last year. And then we come up against Phoenix again and we beat them. And we're moving on the next 2 games. And it's really got me in a good place for the rest of the season.
Definitely, yeah. You know, 5-0 at the time the game was played. Best start ever, you know, in Rowdy's history. And I guess for the club, this must mean, you know, although Neil Collins would like to play it down like we're not going ahead of ourselves. It's a good moment. It's a good moment, but we're not ahead of ourselves.
He sure does love to play it down.
he always loves to play it down. But I'm pretty sure the players, specifically Gonzalez, Lasso, Fernandez, those who have been there for you know, more years than others, this has to mean something special to them. You know, to make history with this team. This is ultimately the reason why they came down to Tampa. You know, to not only have the chance to win trophies, but make history. And when you make history, you know, you make the current fans happy, and then this is gonna create a bigger buzz, and you're gonna get more people involved with what's going on here in Tampa with the Rowdies. And then as a community as a whole, like I said, you get more fans involved. It's like a domino effect. The Rowdies make history. People hear about it. More people join the Rowdies. The Rowdies grow as more as a club, and brings more awareness to the community. As in, they could host events or, provide more info about this club to the community, towards people who specifically, don't really have an interest in soccer, but maybe like now they might, because there's a team in their backyard who's making history and they don't even know it.
Yeah, that's another big thing to take into consideration. People love a winning team, and as you said, when it is in your backyard, like right in downtown St. Pete, that's going to be pretty enticing. I love having a team that's so successful, that's so close to me. And when you are a fan of a certain sport, you might not go outside of that sport very often. But you do hear when the local team is starting to win every game. I'm a big soccer fan, and I've been following the Rowdies, like I've said before, for the past couple of years now. And, I don't always catch everything that's going on with the Lightning. I don't always catch everything that's going on with the Rays or the Bucks. Last year, all of those teams won, and you're damn sure that I knew that was going on at the time. Like, that's just good. That's good press is what it is.
Exactly, yeah. And I like how you bring that up, because I was in the same boat as you were, James. I haven't watched the Rays since I was like in elementary school. I never really watched the Lightning. But now, like last year and the years before that, was specific for the Lightning, the years before that, how I would hear how they would get to the championship. And that made noise, for someone who just watches soccer and football. I was like, whoa, a Tampa team in the championship? So I started watching their games. And then last season with the Rays and the Lightning, both went to the championship. Lightning won it. Unfortunately, the Rays didn't. But it's like, like you're bringing awareness to people who are getting out of their comfort zone with their sports to watch other sports that are also happening in their local community. So I think, it just really, with this history being made by the Rowdies, it's a win-win for everybody.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more with that.
And I want to ask you this, James. For those players who did make their first start, specifically for the New York Red Bulls game, you have Adebayo Smith and Jordan Doherty. Did they do enough to convince Neil Collins that they should be seriously considered for a starting position?
So, for that, I would say Jordan Adebayo Smith has put himself in a really good spot. You come on, and you've got some time to turn those expected goals into conversions, and he did. He had more chances, and he got his goal, the winning goal, in fact. That's never going to look bad on a resume, The other thing, Jordan Doherty came in, and I thought that he was an anchor for the attack that the Rowdies tried to instill throughout the whole game, or at least until he was taken off, naturally. But yeah, he was there, and the other thing for Jordan Doherty was not just the attacking, but in the defensive side. When he went off, the whole game was changed, and the New York Red Bulls had so much more possession. And I think that part of that comes down to the fact that they didn't really have anybody who was accurate enough to put those pinpoint passes over the defense, but also into a spot where a Rowdies player would be able to run onto it. Everybody can boot it up the field, obviously, but if it just lands at the foot of a defender for the other team, then it's coming right back in your face. And Jordan Doherty is good enough with the ball at his feet to play those pinpoint long balls where he can find somebody or somebody on the run, and then you can catch your breath. You're not just defending and then kick it away, and then defending and then you kick it away, and you're defending. That wasn't the case when he was out there. So I think that both of them put themselves in really good spots moving forward, and Neil Collins is definitely going to have to consider them when they are looking at teams where those style of play is going to be important.
100% agree with you, man. We look at Jordan Adebayo Smith, who's trying to make a case for himself with the injured Duba right now, and he gets a goal. What more can you ask for? Jordan Doherty is trying to look for a spot in the team after not starting the previous 3 games, I believe. Lawrence White right now has just a small knock, but Jordan Doherty, he's looking for this is an opportunity to prove to Neil Collins that you should have never took me out of the starting lineup to begin with. You should put me back in here. And I know we have a team of the week, a goal of the week, but if there was an assist of the week, no doubt in my mind, Jordan Doherty will win that award.
Oh, for sure. Class personified there.
Exactly, man. And James, you want to tell us a little bit of what you learned or what you discussed with Neil Collins in the post-game press conference?
Yeah, we'll go over that really quickly. There wasn't a ton that I want to get into here because we do got to get into another game. So a 5-0 start, obviously that, like we said, did make headlines. There was a reporter from, the local television news station, someone who isn't usually on the press conferences, and she asked about that. He said that no one was getting carried away, and he said that even in the locker room he's hearing, people still want to improve their game, that they're not satisfied where they are. He did agree that, they couldn't get control of the game in the final 30 minutes. They were having trouble there, and that might have been down to the New York Red Bulls watering the turf before the second half, but other than the final corner, we deserved a clean sheet. That's what Neil Collins said. I'm not entirely sure that I agree with that one, but hey, he's the coach, and I'll take his word. That's about where we were. And the final thing that I would include was the last quote was, it's always easier to learn from wins than defeats. And that is certainly true, because the next game was not a win. We played 3 days later against Charlotte, and Leo, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to go through the play-by-play? I can go through it because I don't know how down you are at this point.
You could go through the play-by-play. I just want to start out by saying, our predictions here. This is where James gets to leap over me, because he guessed a 1-0 defeat for the Rowdies, and unfortunately they did lose, which means James was correct. So it's almost like a win-lose situation for James, and I predicted a 1-0 win, but that didn't happen. So James, my hat's off to you, my friend.
Well, it's not the hat that I want. You can keep your hat for the time being. We'll pick it up again when one of us chooses a winning prediction that actually comes to fruition. So we'll move into that Charlotte game now. It was actually, because of the game that was 3 days before, it was the case that Neil Collins changed the lineup in this one. So we expected a lot more changes before the Red Bulls game, and ultimately I think that it was the case that the Red Bulls game was a lot tougher for us, and only making 2 changes probably worked out in our favor. Here we moved into a 3-4-3 formation, as opposed to what we usually play, and the changes were up top. We had Sebastian Guinzotti as kind of the lone striker, but he wasn't really alone because he had 2 attacking midfielders beneath him. Those were Matt Serbil and Zach Steinberger. And then the 4 that we had in the midfield were Dalgard at the left, where he doesn't usually play, Jan Ekra getting his first start, Lewis Hilton starting again, and Dayon Harris getting his first start on the right wing. So that is how we started the game, and there was a lot of play down the left wing. We were trying to get Seba, it looked like, to suck the defender out of their normal position on that left wing and then push somebody there. It looked like we were going to have a little bit of success, but then unfortunately things started to fall apart. There was a lot of space, it looked to me, in between the defensive 3 that we had, the back 3, Guillen, Lasso, and Scarlett, and those 4 in the midfield that I mentioned before. And Charlotte really found a way to exploit that. Marcelo Palomino was a player that we had highlighted in the previous podcast. He's on loan from an MLS team, Houston Dynamo, and he had a fantastic game. You hate to give props to the other team, but they are necessary here. He just had a top game, finding that space and exploiting it. There was a chance from Palomino where he gave the ball off after taking it off of Aaron Guillen's foot to his striker, Irvin Parra. Irvin ultimately was alone, and he had a free shot where he beat Evan Loro, but he did not beat the post. It came back, and there was a deflection off of that shot where it ricocheted from the post, and one of our players was luckily there to knock it off the line. Unfortunately, as the play progressed immediately after that, there was a second chance where Palomino got the ball, and he and Parra were passing it back and forth until Parra ultimately backed into Forrest Lasso, who took him down, and there was a penalty. We gave away that penalty, which was ultimately scored by their midfielder, Brun Allergen Eto'o, and he barely beat Evan Loro on that penalty. Loro got a hand to it, but try as he might, he could not save everything that came at him these last couple of days.
Yeah, man, I've seen that replay, and he had to get at least his fingertips to it. And you can just tell by his body reaction that he thought he saved it because it hits the post. He gets up really quickly, but unfortunately, the ball's in the back of the net, and he was just really disappointed with himself. But usually with this Rowdies defense, that mistake Aaron Gideon makes, it's you make a mistake, it's okay. Everyone does it. The Rowdies recover from that, from that last ditch goal line clearance by Sebastian Dalgard. But what kind of threw me off is that usually when that happens, Forrest Lasso is quick to organize his defense again so they can avoid another attack like that. And literally seconds, Charlotte Independence comes back and they target a Forrest Lasso. And any other game, I don't think Forrest Lasso makes that challenge. I think he holds off the defender just a little bit longer. Lets the defender makes the first move. Even if he beats Forrest Lasso, I don't think he makes that challenge. He just waits back and sits back and hopefully Laurel blocks a shot or something. But that kind of threw me off a bit, and it was a penalty. It was a penalty. The referee did get it spot on.
No, I agree. Yep.
Like we said, Laurel was super close to saving that, and I'm pretty sure James you'll talk about it here shortly, but he avenged himself.
He did indeed. Yeah. Unfortunately, though, Evan Laurel's vengeance still came from some really poor play from the Rowdies in the defense. We started the game pretty brightly. Like I said, we were looking down the left wing, and it looked like we had a lot of possession going for us, and that changed after the goal. It seemed like the possession really started favoring Charlotte, and we were not really doing anything like we were in terms of creating chances. We did have one chance that Dayon Harris over on the right wing got into the penalty box and beat his man, but ultimately he flubbed the chance and it was just a save. It really didn't come to anything. So that was the most that we had going forward, while Charlotte, started getting a lot more going their way. And ultimately, it did come from some more below average, I would say, play from the Rowdies back line. Jordan Scarlett got the ball off of a throw-in, I believe it was, and then he tried to clear it out. Really didn't get it that far. It was only, maybe 10, 20 yards away from the top of our 18-yard box. And their midfielder, I think it was Etu again, the goal scorer from the previous penalty, he beat our player in the air to the header. And I think, again, it was Irvin Parra who went through and earned them another penalty. I thought this penalty was... I don't know how the referee made that call, is what I will say. I thought that was a very poor call. And it looked like in the end we got some justice out of that, because Evan Lauro came up big time, and pushed it past the post. He was massive that second one. And not just because he kept the score at 1-0, so that my prediction was right.
No, there's this saying that goes in basketball, and it relates to this from the penalty controversy in this game. Ball don't lie. And usually what that means is that if a ref calls something that really wasn't supposed to be called, I guess karma's gonna make its way into the game and even things out. Fair it out. And I would say that happened here, because that is what you call a soft penalty. I don't know what Scarlett is supposed to do there. Literally, the Charlotte attacker, I believe he runs into Scarlett, and Scarlett's leg, Jordan Scarlett's leg is out, but Bronico, he literally bumps into him. He's the one getting off balance. Scarlett is just holding his ground. I don't know what the referee wants him to do. And you saw a small hesitation from the referee before he gave the call. And from there, I just had a feeling that the referee wasn't even confident in his decision, but he blew the whistle, so he just had to go with it. And Charlotte tried to play little mind games with Evan Laura by switching the kicker, but he wasn't fazed by it. He got a strong hand to it. He saved it, and ultimately, kept the Rowdies in the game, at least for the first half. And I want to go back a little bit, James. With Dayon Harris, I said in the past podcast that when he starts, he'll get an assist, because in the short amount of times he makes getting subbed out in the field in past games, he puts in dangerous crosses. And today it's just he gets in, he beats his mans, he gets in the box, and then he's like, to me it looks like he doesn't know what to do next. He takes a shot, a terrible shot. He makes a pass, bad pass. It's like he does the right things to get these good positions, but he just wastes these opportunities for himself.
Yeah, he did put himself in good positions, and it was just the execution. It's that problem. Maybe it's a little bit of rust from not being in big game situations. Maybe if he played this game and then plays again next week, or this week I should say, obviously, then he will have more of those chances where he actually pulls it off in the end and he gets a good cross. But yeah, I was a little disappointed, unfortunately, that came off. As you said, we were still in the game though, because Evan Loro, bless his heart, saved or guessed right on both penalties, and even though he only saved one, he still got his hand to both of them. He was just again such a massive player for the Rowdies the whole game there. But yeah, we moved then into the second half after his save. Foster Langsdorff came on again, this time for Zach Steinberger. So we moved into a little bit more of a normal setup from what we have been playing. And we had Matthew Serbel as the lone attacking midfielder. And we had Guenzati up front along with Foster Langsdorff. But, it might still be the case that he's just learning that position and doesn't quite know how to play it to the same effectiveness as Duba up top. And it looked like there was just so much disjointed pressing, and when Charlotte had the ball at the back, are trying to break it away from them and possibly get some chances, it really didn't come off. We weren't following the pressing triggers that I think Neil Collins has established very well, and there really wasn't a lot of teamwork in that pressing. Somebody would go and the other players would not, and that's obviously not effective. You have to have all the players marked so that they don't have any passing outlets. That's kind of the whole point of it. It really wasn't that great up top, and then the other thing was our passing was pretty poor at the back. I don't know if you noticed this as well, but I thought that we were doing a very bad job of connecting players connecting the ball from the defense to the midfield to our attacking players. I didn't think that there was really much going on there.
I've seen that since the first minute. When Rowdies were first getting early possessions. One, the ball movement was slow and it was sloppy. It was either the ball wasn't hit enough to complete the pass, or the ball was not accurate enough to the person they want to pass the ball to. Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed this, but honestly, I think the only person that I really seen making good passes was Jan Ecker. He would hold up defenders to make a pass, and then once that person would give a terrible pass, his body language, his shoulders were struck, his hands in the air. He looked disappointed, and I don't blame him, to be honest. And it just looked like the passes were off, the play was off, the communication, the chemistry, everything was off for this Rowdies team. And I was, in the second half, we seen the introduction of Leo Fernandez coming in for Dayon Harris. Jordan Doherty comes on in, and Adebayo Smith comes on for Sabel, and we go back to that original formation that has been proved to win games for the Rowdies. And we've seen a little bit, we've seen a little bit a brighter spot for the Rowdies to get that next goal. And once Leo Fernandez comes in, he's playing balls over the top. He's dancing around defenders. He's putting crosses in the box. And as I was watching this, I was feeling more confident as a Rowdies fan that maybe we'll get a goal. Not necessarily win the game, but at least not lose the game, And that's what I thought we were going to get. And I remember there was a play where Leo Fernandez plays the ball over the top for Langsdorff. And he shrugs off defenders. He gets a shot away, and Charlotte goalkeeper makes a good save to his lower left. But when you see the difference in the way the Rowdies play when these players get subbed on, you see a difference in what they understand the roles are, how they connect with other players, the chemistry they have with other players. Just the energy was a lot quicker, faster. The passes were more accurate. The Rowdies looked like they were going to get a goal. Although that period didn't last long, it looked a little bit better from the Rowdies.
Yeah, there were a bunch of holes that were, popping up in the first half against Charlotte, or in between the middle of the first half and the middle of the second half when all those substitutions came on against Charlotte. Jordan Doherty, like you said, came in for Lewis Hilton, and I thought that space that was in between our back three and the midfield four that originally existed, I thought that really dried up. There really wasn't a lot going on for Marcelo Palomino, and it actually was the case that despite him playing so well in the first half, he came out around the same time that Jordan Doherty came in. It wasn't, the exact same minute, obviously, but it seemed to me that they've realized that they weren't going to get as much play there. So it at least was better in that sense, but there just wasn't enough quality, I should say, going forward that they could put it all together and turn it into a couple of goals or even one at the end. The best chance of the game moving forward from that point was when Connor Antley came in for Sebastian Dalgard, and then he got beat down his right wing, and the Charlotte player put it in for Dane Kelly, another player that we highlighted for Charlotte in the last podcast, and he got off a great shot, but who was there except for Evan Loro to push it wide yet again?
Again,
that was the best chance, and then unfortunately that's the way that it ended.
It is the way that it ended, and it was, for Rowdies fans, you would feel disappointed because it was, again, a counterattack play that led to that shot for Charlotte, going down the right wing. And I believe Dane was the only player, Dane Kelly was the only player in that box, and there was like 3 Rowdies players also in the box. And just a simple cross, just playing it in the box, see if your player gets it, and it lands to him, volleys it. Lucky Laura was there. But usually you see a header from Forrest Lasso clearing it or Jordan Scarlett clearing it, and it just seemed like the Rowdies had an off game, and it does happen in the season. It was gonna happen. Although as much as us and a bunch of other Rowdies fans would have loved to see the Rowdies just go unbeaten the whole season, it's really hard to do so because you have games that come at you fast. You have to rotate your squad. And games like this will happen, and it sucks. It's not the best feeling, but I think the best thing the Rowdies could do from here is just move on and learn from it. And Evan Laurel, like you said, he's 2 back-to-back games where he's just been phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal is the right word for it. That's actually the perfect segue into the analysis that we want to get into for this, because my player of the game, hands down, no question, Evan Loro. It's open and closed book. I don't know if you have any differences in opinion, but I watching that game, I was it was no question for me.
I'm gonna surprise you with my man the match games. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Evan Loro, he's just been. Man, I don't know other words to describe him. I called him amazing, outstanding, phenomenal. I need to look up a thesaurus and see other words for that because I'm just running out of words to describe him. He's been so clutch, man. Like, I literally think without him, the Rowdies, they probably don't win this last. They probably drop points. They drop more points from that Red Bulls game, and
absolutely,
he's just and there's the Rowdies play in a way where it's possession based. They're high up the field. So Evan Loro has to stay concentrated at all times in case counters happen. And, he was only beaten by a penalty today. He saved another one. So, but again, penalties are 50-50. The advantage is more towards the attacker, so you can't really peg him on that. But as far as, in-game saves, he was spot on.
You definitely shocked me with your player of the game call. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I don't think no one's seen that coming.
So let's get into our overall analysis and questions.
So I want to start by saying the Rowdies were not. We said it throughout in the play-by-play, and the Rowdies weren't playing at the level that they're usually capable of. Usually we see faster passes, more crosses in the box, more link-up plays between defenders and the mids, and like you said, the passes weren't really connecting. So it just looked like the Rowdies weren't playing at the level that we've seen them playing all season long, really.
Yeah, it was really disappointing from front to back outside of the obvious player of the game or the not so obvious player of the game, depending on who you ask. It was bad passing, and it was passes that had, they weren't necessarily going anywhere. It wasn't even necessarily the case sometimes that the pass was not strong enough to make it to the man. It was sometimes the case where it was a pass to nobody, and who's going to get on the end of that? The Charlotte player, obviously. It's not really anything that I saw going forward that will help them to get on the end of the ball and possibly put it into the box where you can get off a good shot. And then if you don't have the ball, what you want to do is you want to defend properly, and you want to press the Charlotte players who do have the ball when those proper triggers are struck, so that you can all move as a unit into this side of the field or into that side of the field where you can cut off their angles. That was all wrong the whole game. It was players in the wrong spots and players not getting to their marks in time, because Marcelo Palomino kept finding that space, and he kept finding the space to beat players. Not just that he was, receiving, turning, and playing it along to somebody else. He could beat somebody with all the time that he had to prepare his, dribbles at the defense. I couldn't figure out really where their changes were that we could even get the game under control.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with you, James. And I want to know if you agree with me with this. I have heard that I think out of all the rotated players that I believe that Jan Ekra was the most influential, out of all of them. He looked like he actually wanted to play this game. That he knew how important it was, how this game was for himself, because he wants to get back to that starting position in the middle of the field. And the way he would shrug off defenders, to complete either a simple pass or get the ball out wide for something, hopefully to create a chance for the Rowdies team. And I just thought, he had, I don't know if I would say good game, but probably the best game compared to Serbell, Harris, and Dalgard, who were kept quiet for most of the games. And although Harris did have opportunities, if you don't, if you're not clinical with those chances, then you might as well just have a quiet game, because you're getting good positions, but you're not making the most out of it.
Right. I don't know that I have any arguments with what you're saying, because Matthew Serbell and Deon Harris and Sebastian Dalgard, I don't know, ultimately what they did all day. Matthew Serbell had actually 2 nice dribbles. I think he had the most successful dribbles, but it was the same thing as what we said with that chance with Harris, where he gets himself into a great position and then it turns into nothing, because there just weren't even that many shots on the day. I think that getting into the 80th minute, there was 1 shot on target all day. So whatever Harris and Serbell were doing in the attacking sense, and Sebastian Dalgard on the left wing, and then moving over to the right wing, I didn't see anything that I didn't see anything that turned into any end product that we could literally point to as saying, you got this many touches in this part of the field, you got this many passes into this proper player, that kind of thing. I guess that Jan Ekra would be the best at it, because he's such an experienced player at this level that his floor is going to be a lot higher than all of these other players' floors when they're not playing at a very high level for themselves, of course. But yeah, all of that play moving into the attack. Zach Steinberger was pulled at the half. Foster Langsdorff didn't have any shots that were really noteworthy. And another player, unfortunately, was Sebastian Guenzati. He had an off day up top because he was really not getting a lot of service in the areas that he likes, and he really wasn't too effective at going and collecting the ball away from net.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looked a little frustrated too, because he would drop down to receive the ball as he usually does. But once he would get the ball and he would turn around, he really had no one to pass it to. Or when he would try to pass the ball, it wouldn't be the best pass he has. So you can understand his frustration. He's not playing with the players he usually starts with, but he was guilty for having an off day as well. Hopefully it's not it doesn't last long. Hopefully it's just a fluke. But I want to ask you this, James. If these players, like such as Serbell, Harris, and Langsdorff, if they want to start, how much more do you think that they're gonna have to step it up to be considered a starter for this team?
Well, I think that you need to get those chances actually rolling in. You can't just get yourself into good positions. There are a lot of players who can get themselves into good positions, and then that turns into nothing. There's a really common thing that you see with players growing up, where the most skillful players are the ones that you're like, oh, that kid's gonna make it. That kid's gonna be one of the best in the world, and then it turns out that they fizzle because they can beat all these guys, and then it turns into nothing. They beat a couple of players and they can't get a good shot off. They decide not to make the right pass at the right time, and ultimately every single attack that they're involved in fizzles. I really hope that, this is just an outlier. This isn't what we're going to see from these guys all season, and I really don't expect that it will be either. But yeah, they do have to step it up in the sense that you can't just get yourself into those spots and then lose the ball or play a bad pass or what have you. You have to find the right pass that gives us a shot. We need to have some chances, because our chances in this game, I don't think that we actually even had that many that turned into a shot. Like I said, the 80th minute, we only have one on net. That's not good enough for this team at this league. We're not playing Barcelona. We're playing Charlotte. that's not all right.
Definitely, and since the beginning of the season and preseason as well, there's been a lot of talk of how the Rowdies have so much depth in every single position on the field, and how not only depth but players who are extremely talented, who they could put in and they'll do the job well. And this was the opportunity for these players to show that, to show the buzz that's been going around at Outland Stadium, that Rowdies have basically spots for every single position filled, and that these players are going to compete with each other. And you look at Dayon Harris, Sabel, Dalgard, Jan Ekra, Jordan Adebayo-Smith, these are the opportunities to show that not only do the Rowdies have depth, but to show that no matter who they play, that they could put in any player and they'll come away with the win, or at least compete, And I didn't see that from this game, I feel like some players maybe might have wished to take this chance back and do a better job, and, maybe giving head coach Neil Collins something to think about for it, to start them in future games. But it was a disappointment, and I just, if this is the Rowdies' depth, then I think Neil Collins knows what he has to show to these players who were rotated to get on the same page and the same level quickly, because games it's almost to the point of the season where games are coming in quick and fast. So I think Neil Collins is gonna have to get to these players and make them be on the same page, same chemistry, same level as soon as possible.
Yeah, this was definitely, like you said, perfect phrasing, a mischance for all of these guys. I think that one of the things that you see when you move up to higher levels is there are a lot of players who can fill in at any role, and it's kind of like it's the same player as was taken out so that this new player could step in. You got to have that depth where, it's you don't know what your best starting 11 is, because the best starting 11 is actually more than 11 players. Right now, the Rowdies are not that. They have their starting 11 that is the best for them. And depending on, the formation, maybe you could make an argument that somebody needs to step into the central midfield who wouldn't have for the previous game. But otherwise, every single other one of those positions is filled, and it's being written in pen. It's not being written in pencil. I don't know when we're going to get there, and I hope it's soon. But the players who were on the bench for the first couple of games of the season and stepped in against Charlotte really shot themselves in the foot. I was going to say blew themselves up. I don't know if it's that drastic, but they certainly shot themselves in the foot for the next game going forward. Luckily, I think that our opponent is not going to be too great. We're going to get into that a little bit more later, though.
Exactly, yeah. And with all this being said, I want to ask you, James, do you believe that too much rotation from this game and change of formation was a reason for the loss, or could it have been less rest days, or just a fluke of the Rowdies just not playing at the level they're capable of?
Actually, that was something that I brought up with Neil Collins in the press conference, and I don't know that I disagree with what he said either. I asked him if it was a difference in the lineup that might have been, at fault here, and he said that he thought that they were equipped to deal with it. There was a lot of players who worked their way into the game, and it was there for us, is what he said. It was, kind of there waiting for the taking, and it was just that the players did not grow into the game to a sufficient level. I think that, like we had pointed out, we started relatively well, that growing part, and then it kind of just leveled off when they scored on us, and we never got back to it. You have to step it up when you get scored on, and when that game is available for you to come and grab it by the coattails and make it yours. You have to do that. These players did not do that, and I think that they are all capable of it. It's just that you have to understand that, you know, if you don't get the right cross off, you're not going to start the next game. If you don't get the right pass off, then you might be benched. That's what they kind of have to understand. And I don't think that they approach this with any tenacity or any real desire to make sure that they are giving themselves the best chance to start in the next game. You have to have that want to be there and to win each and every single game to do so. The Rowdies just didn't have that today.
And based off of what, you know, I agree with what Neil Collins and you were saying. But based off with what Neil Collins said, and also what you think, do you believe that Rowdies fans should be worried about this loss, or is this something that they're going to move on from and return back to their winning ways?
Well, it's kind of what you mentioned earlier when it goes to the depth part of the equation. Over the course of a season, they're going to have injuries. That's part of sport. We already have one, apparently, from our starting 11, let alone the players who weren't able to start the season, like Juan Tejada and Lucky Mkosana. We need to get these guys who are out there up to speed, who are not starting every game, up to speed when they are out there. And that's the thing that I think that fans might be worried about. Our starting 11 is probably one of the best that this league has seen because, as we've noted, the Rowdies made history with it. You know, they won 5 games, and they didn't lose any along that stretch. That's extremely hard to do at this level because there's just so many factors that go into putting a team together and go into each and every game, making sure that you have the right level and the right attitude to succeed. And, you know, if they can't get that when they are changing a couple of players, then that's going to really be a problem moving down through the stretch of the season. And especially when you get into the middle of summer and the games are, you know, it's 7 at night, but it's still 95 degrees out, or you're traveling twice in 1 week for different games like we did this time. That was a fluke of the schedule, but I don't think it's the only time that we'll have something like this. You gotta think about that. Maybe not be worried, but it's something you definitely gotta think about.
Yeah, something to have in the back of your mind. And don't worry, Rowdies fans. I'm gonna say right now that you shouldn't be worried. You know, I think this is more of a something for Neil Collins to see, something for him to observe, to experiment with. And, you know, maybe this formation didn't work. Maybe the amount of players he changed didn't work. But, you know, he's a smart man. You know, he always comes back with something better, and he's gonna learn from this, and the Rowdies will get on better. But like you said, the starting 11, it's the best 11 in the league. You know, it's the reason why they made history. But with Big Duba gone, you have Adebayo Smith, who he didn't start the game against Charlotte, but he did against New York Red Bulls too, and he got the goal. And, you know, if he could do that, I believe he's next up to show what he could do. Maybe, you know, he scores enough goals to where we're like, okay, Duba's gone, no worries. We have Adebayo Smith to replace him for the time being. You know, so I don't think our Rowdies fans should be worried. I do think we'll get full strength, obviously without Dos Santos, but we'll get back to similar full strength starting 11 this weekend. We'll get more into that later, but I think that we will. So I don't think Rowdies fans should be worried. And this game was the second time that we've seen new signing Foster Langsdorff make his second appearance for the Rowdies. What do you make of that, James?
Right now, I don't have anything positive to say, actually. I think that Foster Langsdorff is going to become a much more important player moving down the stretch for us, but it's going to be the case that we have to work him into the team, like I said. He needs to get on the same page with everybody else and know what his role is. And then, you know, that's going to happen for him. We're gonna start picking that back up again. He's definitely going to get there because he's capable of playing very well at this level. It's just something that he hasn't had the chance to do yet. But with Foster Langsdorff, then we have to look back at Seba, and he hasn't scored, or he didn't score in this game, obviously, and in the game before, which for him appears to be at least a little bit of a dry spell. Do you think that might be do you think that might be something longer than just a dry spell, or what do you see from that?
You know, That's such a good question. And because we seen what Dos Santos was in here. He was playing good because Dos Santos and Gonzalez had that chemistry. Gonzalez would play him on goal. Dos Santos would play him on goal. Or they were both getting really good positions to make it hard for defenders. But with Adebayo Smith, he was just a focal point up there. Gonzalez would have to drop back, which means less opportunities for him to get a goal. But however, when it was Duba and Gonzalez, they both would drop back, collect the ball, get the wing backs higher up the field, give the ball back to the people in the middle of the park to create chances. So now you see Gonzalez picking up an additional role that Dos Santos was there to take on his own. So maybe we might see a drier spell from Gonzalez, unless it's a penalty. But maybe we won't see him as much scoring open goals until someone can replace Dos Santos. But I think it's gonna be hard for him to get goals in this team because, like I said, he won't be in those positions where he usually is. Because Jordan Adebayo Smith is not the type of guy to drop back and hold up play. He's someone that you just send in on a run either out wide or between the defenders, and he'll chase it and he'll collect the ball. So with that being said, I don't think Gonzalez is facing a dip in form, but don't be surprised if you don't see him score 1 or 2 goals every single week.
Right. Yeah. And to get back to Jordan Adebayo Smith and the other players that we were talking about, Langsdorff, Serbil, Dalgard, Ekra, do you see any of these guys coming back into the starting lineup? I personally think that Jordan Doherty put himself in a good position, but what do you think moving forward here?
I agree with you on Jordan Doherty. These past 2 games we've seen against New York Red Bulls, like we said earlier, when he came out, when he's on the pitch, he does that beautiful assist, and when he got off the pitch, you see the difference he made. Against Charlotte, when he got subbed on, you seen the difference he made as well. He really picked up things in the middle of the field, and he brought a little more energy to the game. So I think Neil Collins knows that Doherty is a vital piece to him, and maybe depending on White's fitness, I do see Doherty getting back into the starting lineup. The other person I see at this point is Jordan Adebayo Smith. Simply because he's been with the team longer. Langsdorff is just getting back. We have Dos Santos injured, Juan Tejada injured, Lucky Mkosana injured. So I think Jordan Adebayo Smith, this is perfect opportunity for him to show Neil Collins that even after when players are fit, it's an opportunity for him to show that, hey, I'm still baking in goals for you. You should keep me on the lineup until I'm not of good use anymore. But for now, I think Adebayo Smith and Doherty will be starting again soon.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that because I just don't know what the other players. Maybe Jan Ekra, just because, like we said, he's a very experienced player. But other than that, I really don't see it. Unfortunately, at least not yet. Yeah. But that'll take us into the final part of the game. I spoke with Neil Collins at the press conference. It wasn't too long. I got the opportunity to ask him a ton of questions because there were a lot of questions that I had for him, but he, like always, wanted to keep it close to the chest. I asked him, just like we said, I asked him about the difference in lineup, what went wrong, was that a part of it, that kind of stuff. And he said that there really weren't many positives to take away. The players didn't perform, he said. He was very disappointed, and it looked like a team that had played on Wednesday. I think that that's kind of a really good summary, actually, of how things were. Ultimately, it was, there was no moving that was quick or effective, he saw, and, the decision-making was really poor. Something that we had already mentioned, obviously, and he didn't want to get into specifics. He told me that it was just too close after the game to give me any real reviews of, how the tactics went, which I think is a little bit of a lie because I'm pretty sure Neil Collins knows exactly what goes wrong when he sees it go wrong, but fair enough, I can understand him being emotional after a performance like that. I just asked him a thing about the Scottish national team to change the subject. But, other than that, he told me that he was positive on Jordan Doherty like we were. He said that Evan Loro had just a massive performance these last 2 games. He said that it was a soft penalty, but otherwise, they were really should have been able to play through it because of what Evan Loro did for them, and I totally agree.
Yeah, one thing I would say is that I feel bad for Arrows Arena because with how Laurel is playing right now, I don't see Arozarena or any other goalie on the roster getting their chance in goal anytime soon, because he's just someone who's Laurel's just someone who's in form and someone you just can't drop. Maybe you could rotate the midfielders, the wingers, the striker, the defenders, but not a goalkeeper who's saving your butt week in, week out.
No, that's a good point. The U.S. Open Cup was unfortunately canceled this year again due to COVID, and that probably would have been Rico Arozarena's best chance, because I can't see him getting in front of Evan Laurel playing like he is. But, that is how soccer goes, and how soccer goes also should take us into the standings update and tell us how the Rowdies are going this year. Even though we lost, we are still first place in the Atlantic Division. We are still first place in the Eastern Conference, in fact. But we did drop those points, obviously. We could have given ourselves a little bit more of a buffer. Hopefully, we will be able to give ourselves that buffer when we move into our game this week. We're going to cover this pretty quickly because there's actually not a ton to talk about with Loudoun, our opponents. We are playing them Friday night at home at 7 p.m. If you can get tickets, please do that, because it's going to be a good game, I think. I will finally have the chance to go to a game this season, and I'm really excited that it will be this one. Loudoun are second to last, in our conference. They are only ahead of Charleston, who are just really, really got off to a poor start, obviously. This season is not going well for them, and it is barely going better for Loudoun United. The only win that they have had so far was against the New York Red Bulls, and as we said in the podcast prior to this, they have been struggling up until the game that we played them, and luckily did beat them there. It is almost entirely made up of academy players for the DC United team in MLS. The only difference is, like we said for New York Red Bulls this time around, they are on an international break in MLS, so they could send some players who haven't gotten a lot of playing time down to the Loudoun United roster. It remains to be seen if they do that, and if so, which players they will. Two that are likely to appear from the MLS team are Michael DeShields and Drew Skundrich. These are recent college graduates who have joined MLS, and they're probably, on the cusp of getting some more game time. I know that Drew Skundrich has played a couple of appearances for DC United this year, but this is probably their time to really get into the swing of things for Loudoun United here. I think that because of what this looks like and the opponent that we're really probably set to face here, barring any last-minute changes, this is the game that we have to come back, and we have to, kick them in the teeth, kind of. We have to take this game and show that, the Rowdies can lose a game, and then we can come back and we can win it. The very next week. It's a really good chance to do that, and I expect that we're going to do so.
And what better way to go back to winning ways in front of a home crowd, right, James? We know
That's
how.
Right.
It's been 604 days since Owl Lang Stadium was last open to full capacity. So thank you to our producer for giving us that special note. And but I believe it's ready to welcome all the fans back, to bring the whole energy back into the stadium. And I know these Rowdies players are going to feel it. They're going to miss coming back home, playing in front of that beautiful water down at Owl Lang Stadium in the downtown St. Pete. And what better way to go back to winning ways, to make a statement that it's a fluke that we got that loss, but we're gonna make amends by winning in front of our home crowd.
That's right. Yeah, getting back in front of a full capacity is perfect timing, because we're just coming off a loss. It's perfect timing because we've got an opponent that we should be able to beat up pretty handily, and it's perfect timing for me because I love seeing a good game with the Rowdies.
And I unfortunately will not be at the game, but you bet your butt I will be watching it. I really want to see how the Rowdies will react. And without further ado, James, I think you know what time it is.
Is it time for our predictions?
I believe so. You, my friend, are up 3-2 on me, so I'm going to try and put on my, like Clint Dempsey did, and put my future glasses on and try to predict a score that will hopefully level us up.
I'm surprised you wanted to go to Clint Dempsey after last night, but we will go with we will move on to our predicting powers here, and I think that with everything going on it's not going to be like the USA-Mexico game that Clint Dempsey watched. I think it's going to be a 3-1 win to the good guys, and the good guys this time around are the Rowdies.
I believe the Rowdies will win. I think this is going to be a perfect win, as in they keep a clean sheet and they get the goals needed to get back. So I'm going to go with a 3-0 win for the Rowdies.
3-0 to 3-1. Okay.
Yeah, because they, the first 2 games of the season were 3-0, and they're going to chase that feeling again. Although there's no Duba, like I said, you have Adebayo Smith, who's slowly getting to where Neil Collins would like him to be. So I'm going for a 3-0 win. And who knows, maybe Gonzalez listening to us and wants to prove me wrong. And El Capitano just might score some goals. Who knows? But I do think the Rowdy will win.
Something like that has happened a couple of times so far over the course of this season for our predictions. And we'll see if it comes true again.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where I said like some players need to step it up, and literally the game after they step it up. So I'm kind of curious if they heard me or not, and if they have, I'm not dissing you or anything like that. It's just something I'm seeing. There's no hard feelings or anything like that.
Oh, no, at the professional level, I'm sure that they understand that.
Yeah.
But that does mean then that they have to prove you wrong, naturally.
Hey, I would love to prove them wrong, for them to prove me wrong any day, as long as it means Rowdy's winning.
Exactly. All right, well, I think that should do it for us. We are going to wrap it up here, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in this week again. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. You can follow me at RBLR James K on Twitter if you would like to. Leo, can they also follow you?
Of course they can follow me. I'm on Twitter at _Leo Santos __. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We're on Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and other major podcast platforms. You name it, we'll be on there. And as always, thank you, listeners, for listening to this 5-hour edition of RBLR Rowdies here on RBLR Sports. And it's been an up and down week, but you best believe that we're ready for Friday. We're ready to have all the fans back, and I just can't wait for it.
Go kick some Loudoun butts.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time, listeners. And until next time, come on, you Rowdies. Let's go, Rowdies.
Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.